Well, there is a lot to talk about today, so let's welcome our first guest. And if I can do my best impression of The Rock from the Super Bowl, it is time! Time to introduce a man from Canada's Prince Edward Island, who is the son of a Hall of Fame icon. He's an NBA D-League Coach of the Year who achieved his dream of joining the big time when he helped the world-famous Boston Celtics to get within touching distance of an NBA championship. And now he's flown around the world enduring bureaucratic red tape, quarantine, and a life on the road to have the Perth Wildcats in second spot on the NBL ladder. He's also won the internet with his tweeting time and time again. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to introduce your coach of the Perth Wildcats, Scott Morrison. Welcome to the Dribble podcast.
Well, I try to match your energy, but I don't think I can.
I got to try and be a little bit different every now and then, and it has been tough for you. And we'll cover a lot of different areas today. But there's one question I think everyone would like to know, and that is, how are you? Like, it's been a tough introduction for you to this country, and you're stuck in Melbourne now after being in Tasmania. How is your life going?
Well, it wasn't what we signed up for. To be honest, I think that's not a big secret. But it's no one's fault. Just the way things go, circumstances, and we're just trying to do our best as a family to deal with it, as the other guys are and their families. But at least we have each other on the road here. So, as in, when you say have each other, you have the players, or is your wife and kids travelled over to be in Melbourne with you now? No, I meant like the team, the players, the staff. Like we're all going through the same thing. A handful of in the travel party here have got to see their families from little small stretches or a little bit longer, but for the most part, we're all dealing with different circumstances, but similar at the end of the day. So you were appointed in August, and that means you've been coach for 177 days as of right now, and you've spent only 30 of those living in WA in freedom. If we take out the 14 days during hotel quarantine, you've still got another month on the road. Like, it's not a scenario you could have ever imagined. Who do you turn to as the head coach when you want to vent or something like that? Because you don't want to vent to players, I'd imagine, because you talk about staying focused and that sort of stuff. Who's your go-to? Well, to be honest, our team manager, Charles Nixie, and I have kind of been each other's venting partner. We drive together to practice every morning. And it's not every day, but every now and then, you can kind of sense when the other guy needs to let a little bit off his chest and just try to listen and complain alongside. But we're kind of in similar situations. He's got 3 kids at home and his family's unable to travel here because his wife works and the kids are in school and lots of other reasons. So it's been good to have Nixie here. He does a great job with his role, but also just as a friend. And, all the staff has been pretty good. Like, everyone's going through it. I spoke to the players again today, when we first moved down here, or to Tasmania. Now we're in Melbourne, but when we first moved down to Tasmania, we said, there's going to be days where you're going to wake up and feel sorry for yourself. You're going to want to complain, and that's fine, but just make sure that you get back on track and focus on why we're here, because the worst thing that we could do is to waste the time that we're here and put our families through all this stuff for no reason. So we kind of owe it to them and to ourselves to do our best, and sometimes you got to complain for a few minutes, but then you got to get back on track and remember what you're doing this for. So how's your wife, how's your son, how's your daughter? You've missed half your daughter's life at this point, which is quite extraordinary to think of, given she's, 4 or 5 months at the moment. That must be the hardest part. Yeah, it's a tough thing. This is actually my second time with this happening, because when I went to the bubble, our son was, about 8 or 9 months, missed his first word, missed his first steps, which was tough. But you got to hope there's a reason that you're doing these things and that, it'll be better in the long run. And I know they're young kids. They aren't going to remember this, but I sure will. And it's been tough to kind of see them doing stuff and getting new experiences that I can't be a part of. And I'm just really appreciative of my wife for basically doing all the parenting while I'm gone. And not an easy task. She signed up for this hoping that I would be around more than usual. In the NBA, you're on the road 40-some games of the year, plus summer league and other stuff. So this was supposed to be a move that could keep us together more, and end up kind of backfiring in that sense. But hopefully this will be the last time that we have to deal with something like this. Absolutely. And despite all of that, you're doing an amazing job and have this team second on the ladder. What was the wash-up, though, from the loss to Melbourne? When you look back on that, what was the thing that stood out more than anything? Well, I'm always hesitant to say, what I think is the reason we lost or whatever, because I don't want to disrespect the other team's efforts. There's 10 good teams in this league, and any given night, a team's capable of beating another team. no matter who it is. And Melbourne definitely was a opponent that we were worried about. Really tough defensively, a lot of good players, a lot of veteran guys who have won before. But I think after watching the film, there's a lot we could point to where we kind of beat ourselves. There's the rebounding. There's letting guys cut back door for layups. There's not getting back in transition. I'm sure every team has their list after they lose a game, but that's kind of what we're working on. And I think our systems have been proven to be pretty solid and capable when we execute both sides of the ball. Our half-court defense has been pretty good all season, but we're struggling with the transition defense and our rebounding especially. And the guys kind of have two choices. Either they clean those two things up or they become, darn near perfect in the half-court to make up those points. So, the thing with losses is it's always easier to improve after you lose one because everyone's more eager to get better and lock in and work harder. So, knock on wood, so far this year, every time we've lost a game, we've come back better, and that's what we have to do this time as well.
One of the things that I sort of missed during the game as the mayhem was sort of going on with them coming back and then you guys coming back was that Luke Travers only spent a couple of minutes on the floor in the entire second half. Was he okay, or was that just an anomaly from the game given how well he played against the Phoenix previously?
Well, I would say that he probably wasn't going to play as much just because he had turned his ankle that week and he was only cleared to play on game day. But that being said, he was available. I wasn't really happy with some of his defensive miscues, we'll say. And, as the great or ungreat, depending how you look at it, Bobby Knight said there's no better connector to your ears than your butt on the bench. And not to say that Luke was to blame for the loss or anything like that. Everyone made mistakes, but there was a couple mistakes that he made that I thought hurt us and subbed him out. And guys like Kevin White were out there for kind of our comeback. And once you get rolling with the comeback, you don't really want to, make a change if you don't have to. So some guys got stuck on the bench, Luke being one of them, but not the only one. And not necessarily because of their play, but more so the group we had on the floor was rolling and we wanted to go with them. But I'm really trying to challenge Luke just to be really solid in his details. He's got a great future ahead of him. He's got a lot of potential. He does a lot of things very, very well. And I just want him to be as good as he can be, possibly.
Your squad's really interesting from a coaching perspective every single game, that you keep getting a different team because of injuries or at the moment with suspension with Matt. And you've only had your entire roster available twice for the entire season so far. So you've said a couple of times that you train together and everyone should be able to play with each other. But do you have a really good idea about what your best unit looks like once they're all together yet?
I don't think I do, to be honest. It's been different on different games. The Southeast Melbourne game, we went really small with Vic at the 5 and Luke was playing defensively anyway, the 4, and we were probably as small as any team that's played in the NBL this season, or small lineup, I should say. In other games, Jesse's been out there as a stretch 5 when we've made our big runs, and different guys have had different shining moments, you could say. So it's nice that we've had different guys step up, but at the same time, kind of like you alluded to, it's also nice when you know what your best lineup is, and I'm not sure we have that yet. And maybe it depends on who the opponent is, but at the end of the day, we got to get enough consistent play out of guys where we can really see who we want to go to in crunch time.
So you mentioned the rebounding. That's been the biggest issue that fans have certainly been talking about. And Vic Law did a press conference today where he said, "Coach keeps telling me to box out and I haven't been, so that's my fault." What can you do in this environment at the moment? You're negative 34 across rebounds for the past 3 games, and it's a clear problem throughout the entire season for you when you haven't gone well. What does the team need to do to fix this up, do you feel?
I think they just have to prioritize it. It's a tough thing because rebounding is one of those deals where you don't really practice it a whole lot, and also you're kind of inviting the threat of injury when you really get on guys to hammer each other in practice. But they still have to go find a body and make sure that their own guy doesn't get it. I think rebounding numbers can be misleading. I used the example to the team today of Russell Westbrook. When he was averaging a triple-double in OKC, a lot of those rebounds were credit to Steven Adams for blocking his big guy out, and Westbrook just kind of cleaning up the loose change. But a lot of times the guys who do the dirty work or block out or keep their own guy off don't get the rebound and thus don't get credit for it. But we're going to have to tuck our pride aside and And not that the guys are worried about the numbers, but I think sometimes you can look at your rebounding totals and say, oh, I got 8 rebounds. I'm doing really good on the glass. But at the end of the day, if you missed 4 or 5 blockouts where the guy you're supposed to be checking got the second chance, then those other rebounds don't mean quite as much. So I think it's just a team effort, to make sure all 5 guys are engaged. We have a lot of guys that do great things, and sometimes the negatives aren't as easy to see, like the blocking out. So we just got to pay attention to those small details and make sure we pick it up.
So we're entering a pretty crucial month in terms of the NBL and squads, I reckon. We're seeing some teams make changes already, and you'll be back home in March, and there'll be quarantine issues once that occurs. And this week, the NBA COVID hardship rule will expire for 10-day contracts, which will see players around the world probably feel a bit more comfortable about moving around. Is this your squad guaranteed, or may you be forced into looking around and saying we need more height? What's your perspective on it at the moment?
Well, I think that's probably a question better suited for Danny Mills. But being my first time through, I'm not really sure how things, generally operate at this point in time of the season. Obviously, following these type of leagues from afar, you don't maybe see all the transactions that happen and when they happen. But I think, in this type of an environment, this type of league, you got to always have your eye on things, but stay focused on your own group. So I'll try to stay focused on our group and being the best we can be and helping the guys the best I can. And I'm sure that Danny will get across me if there's something that comes up that might be able to help us, for the stretch run. I know it seems like we've been going for a long time, but we're not even really halfway through our game schedule, having only played 12 games, but it's going to happen fast. There's a lot of games here in the next 3 weeks. And like you said, once we get back home, it's going to be tough to make many changes. But if there's something out there that can help the team, I'm sure that the front office will get it done.
So I love your backstory and the work you've done to get to where you are. For the listeners who aren't aware, Scott's a classic example of someone who has done absolutely everything possible to succeed, including driving the bus and helping with laundry in his first year as basically an intern in the NBA D-League. But your approach to analytics really intrigues me. Take me through the 3,000 shot investigation you did on how shots are actually created.
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure it was 3,000. It felt like a lot more than 3, but it might have been around 3,000. But it was a lot of shots for sure that I tracked. But excuse me. But basically, when I got to volunteer in the D-League, now the G League, it was about 10 years ago, and analytics was really taking off in terms of shot selection and teams trying to get away from mid-range and long twos and really focus on getting threes. And there was a team in the G League at the time, RGV Vipers, who was the Houston Rockets team, and they were like the leaders in that analytics push. They were, gunning threes, chucking threes, basically 0 twos other than layups or free throws. And I took an interest in it, and I felt like from a player's point of view, it was hard. I guess I thought some threes were better than other threes, and I didn't think all threes should be painted with the same brush. Basically, I figured by tracking them and tracking the percentage based on how the shot was created, whether it was dribble into the three or just pass it around and shoot it or get into the paint and kick it out, I tried to figure out what the most valuable threes would be, and didn't take a rocket science to do it, but I wanted to have something on paper to kind of back my beliefs, and that was that, threes that come from a paint thread or a paint touch where they get kicked out or the defense is shrunken into the paint and then has to close out to shooters, those threes are obviously the best ones you can get. So I kind of wanted to come up with a way to help players determine what a good shot was and a bad shot was without having to overthink it. And in a simplified way of putting it, basically we said, hey, if the ball touches the paint before you shoot it, make sure you're firing it when you catch it. And as an offensive attack, you want to make sure you get those paint threats and not just pass the ball around or dribble in to shoot a three. Now, certain players are the exception. Obviously, someone like Steph Curry, if he's dribbling down and can get open three, he should take it. Analytics is all based on success. It's not so much that analytics says don't take twos. It's just that not many guys can hit twos at the same success rate as threes. Like there was 11 players in the NBA last year that shot mid-range over 50%. So for those guys, analytics is shooting mid-range, but for the rest of the league, the majority of the league, they should be, looking for kick-out threes or spot-up threes. and either being ready to take them or being the guy who can try to get his teammate one. So that was a kind of a long, convoluted answer, but basically I studied how to determine what a good shot was.
So we've seen Bryce this year as a classic example. We've seen him multiple times drive into the paint and then flick it out to Vic in the corner, and Vic's nailed the shot, and everyone at RSC Arena went wild going, we haven't seen Bryce do that before. Is that the style that you're referring to there? Get it right in, get everyone focusing on the one player, and then flick it out to the guy who's clear.
Yeah, well, it's not game changing or rocket science, but we definitely track and encourage getting the ball into the paint, and then whether either it's finishing at the rim or getting fouled or getting a kick out three, that's the best possible offense for us. And having studied that for now 10 years probably, basically at every level, the difference between that type of a shot versus a shot you take when you don't get into the paint is about 30% on success rate difference. So, it's one of those things where everyone knows that, but I think it's important to track it, because if it's a game where you're not attacking as much as you should, you can point to the numbers and kind of remind the players, like, hey, the numbers, we got to get in. This is what we're getting in right now. It's not enough. Get a little bit more aggressive, look to attack the paint more and get our shots that way, as opposed to just, get in isolation situations or dribble down and shoot and kind of be a more of a settling shot selection. So it's something that everyone knows, but it's nice to have the numbers there to back you up.
Now, I mentioned Bryce before. We have our award here called the Dribble Podcast MVP, and the votes I went for in the Wildcats game for the listeners, there was one vote to Vic Law. Didn't shoot well, but still had a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds and 3 blocks. 2 votes went to Mitch Norton, 21 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, and played through pain yet again. And 3 votes to Bryce Cotton, 31 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals and a block, yet people still said Melbourne did an amazing job of defending him. I always find that bit different when people say that about Bryce. Now, you mentioned analytics. Like we've seen in cricket all summer, teams focus on specific matchups between bowler and batter. AFL coaches have alarms going off in the coach's box when their opposition go past certain KPIs. But you're standing on the sidelines in games and just having to really trust your eye, I suppose, more than anything. But you do have a big sheet of paper stuck in your pocket, which you refer to at different points. What are the key things you're trying to focus on during games when you don't have the opportunity to go back and look at replays, or have someone in your ear telling you this stat's up to this, or this is what's going on from an analytical standpoint during the game?
Well, offensively, the main thing I'm focused on is how we're going to get an advantage. I believe offense is pretty simple in terms of you got to get an advantage, you got to maintain it through spacing and ball movement, and then obviously finish off with making a shot somewhere along the way. So for me, it starts with how can I help the guys get an advantage. That's where I think the coach can help the most, whether it's calling a certain play or alerting the team to a certain matchup we can expose. That's really how I'm looking at the game offensively. How is the other team playing our screens? How do we want to attack it so we get that advantage and so forth? Defensively, it's more so, are we sticking to our system? We have a defensive system that in theory can defend any action that other team throws at us. Easier said than done, obviously, with the amount of good players that we have to play against. But it's more so tracking, like, are we making little mistakes within our system? Because that's when we're exposed for giving up easier shots than we intend to. So, analytics doesn't play a big deal during the game, but it does play a big deal in terms of our preparation and how we set up our system, you could say.
We've seen a lot of the Australian-based sports coaches looking overseas at different sports to try to work out different ways, things they can steal, basically. You're having a first look at Aussie sports at the moment. Is there anything that you've looked at and gone, I could utilise that sport to add something different to the way I coach?
Not too much yet. I mean, cricket, I enjoyed learning about it, and I kind of probably, I guess, would relate it more to baseball just because of obviously the pitching or the bowling and the batting. So I didn't see a whole lot from cricket that we could take other than the mindset. I really talked about the Scorchers a lot because they were in a similar situation than us. Not exactly the same. They were, I believe, on the road for a shorter time, and they kind of knew when they were going to go home. So a little bit different than us. But that being said, they were able to step up every game and get the job done regardless of their situation. So that's been something I've pointed to. But I'm also now turning my attention to AFL and trying to learn the rules there. And I'm sure there's going to be some stuff with, spacing and pace and that kind of stuff that maybe we can take from it. So we'll see. I know even when I was working in the NBA, a lot of the teams did and still do have Australian like sports science department guys and guys who are kind of running all their load management and their training. And I know that in Perth here with the Wildcats, that's been top notch as well. So it's made my job a lot easier being able to just count on those guys for kind of letting me know, how much to do each day and what we should do to make sure the guys are at their peak performance by game night.
I'm sure you're monitoring a hell of a lot of stuff back home and back in America as well, given you lived in both Canada and America. How did you guys watch the Super Bowl?
Well, I got lucky in a certain respect because most of our team got their booster shots on Sunday here in Melbourne. And as a result, we went pretty light on Monday just because some guys would be feeling ill and a little bit under the weather, and we had lots of time to prepare for the next game. So we cut things short on Monday morning and was able to get back and watch the second half. So it was kind of nice, get some snacks and put the game on and text the friends back home who were all watching the same thing. It doesn't happen that much with the time difference, but it was a nice little break, I guess, from reality to do that. And didn't hurt that it was a good game, and also didn't hurt that I had Bengals plus 4.5.
You love a punt. I love the fact that you bet on the sport that you don't even know anything about at times as well. Betting on the Scorchers when you've watched about 3 games was the greatest Australian thing I reckon we'll bet on anything. You do have an important game coming up in a couple of days that has nothing to do with you, but a lot to do with your home country, and that's Canada playing in the ice hockey gold medal match at the Winter Olympics. Have you set that day aside for yourself?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed in myself for the lack of Olympics that I've watched. I do have a few bets down on Team Canada to win hockey and curling. The funny thing was last Olympics, I believe we lost to the U.S. in the gold in both men's curling and men's hockey on the same day. Got to be one of the most disappointing days in Canadian Winter Olympics history. So hopefully we can get the gold. It's not quite the same vibe to it because, well, first of all, I'm here, which is a big difference. And I was a little bit disappointed. Australia beat Canada in mixed curling, and not one guy talked trash to me. So I was a little bit disappointed in the guys for that. But I didn't bring it up until after the fact either. But the fact that the NHL players aren't playing hockey, for the casual fan like me, it takes a little bit away from it. I don't know any of the players, and you have to wonder, is it the best against the best? Whereas, as we saw this past summer or this past winter for you guys in basketball, you knew you were getting everyone's best crack or pretty close to it, and the best teams were the ones that were winning. And in hockey, I couldn't tell you one player that's playing. So definitely rooting for the home team or the home country, but doesn't have the same kind of stakes, I guess, as when the NHL guys are playing.
Well, maybe no one got stuck into about the curling, but I'll mention the fact that as of recording right now, Canada has won the exact same number of gold medals as Australia in the Winter Olympics, and it's 38 degrees here in Perth right now. So we're not the greatest country when it comes to the winter, and you guys are. So I reckon we're doing okay. You have another big day coming up from a Canadian point of view. It's Prince Edward Islander Day in a couple of days' time. So I'm sure the family back at home will be having a public holiday. And is that a day that means a lot to you at all?
I didn't even really know it existed, to be honest.
Oh, really?
I think the way they do it back home is every province, like every state, every province has their own day, and some people call it Family Day. I guess we call it Prince Edward Island Day, but I haven't been in Prince Edward Island this time of year for, probably 22 years. So I haven't been around to celebrate, I guess. But maybe I'll have to have a beer or two here in honor of the PEI Day.
Very good. Well, we'll finish up with a segment which we call This or That. Just a basic question where you can't sit on the fence and we need a clear answer. And given you've spent so much time in hotels and in quarantine, and we're about to speak to a Perth Lynx player who is in quarantine, I thought we'd talk about some quarantine stuff today and entertainment. What's the best way to spend your entertainment and hours when you're in quarantine? By binging on a series or binging on movies?
I go series, for sure.
Anything specific?
Man, how much time do we have? That's a whole other podcast. Right now I'm watching Inventing Anna. I like series because I can watch my game film, my basketball stuff on my laptop and have a show going in the background and don't really have to be too locked into the show. Whereas movies, I feel like you got to be more locked in, and I don't really have 2 hours to burn most days. But the series you can get through quick, and you can always press pause on the game film if there's an important part in the show, but you still can get through it without missing a whole lot and multitask.
Brent, well, look, thanks so much for your time. You've been fantastic to deal with ever since getting the job, and you're leading this club through extraordinary circumstances, and your life obviously isn't easy at the moment. So we really appreciate you coming on and all of the work you've done so far for basketball in this country. So thanks for your time and good luck this weekend.
Yeah, no, same to you, Craig. Thanks for everything, man, and appreciate all you've done for us. And hopefully we'll see you in 3.5 weeks here.